Welcome to this week, and what a week it has been. Holy banana bread, we're back at it again. This is cool. All right. And right off the top, we got Mr. Red Taco. I did everything thinking this was at 1 p.m. Nope, 2 p.m. Go me. Awesome, awesome. And Brian, no, unfortunately, you're second. But, yeah, you tried. You tried. Second is no laughing position. So, anyway, we're going to have a great show for you today. We're going to talk about a whole bunch of different things. And as always, this is all about you guys, the community. Whatever questions you have, we will address them. So, it's all pretty darn cool. So, what have we had going on last week? Oh, it was a really big week. We saw King Charles taking on his duties. We've seen the Ukraine push Russia back a little bit. We've seen a lot of stuff with energy. We've seen a CPI report that absolutely tanked the market. We saw Bitcoin rise and then fall very quickly. We've seen a lot of stuff happen with the US dollar. So there's a lot of stuff going on, and we got a whole bunch of different stuff here to talk about today. So let's just start right off the top with that US CPI data, because that's the big story of the week. So Wednesday morning before the market opened, we had the CPI release. So the CPI is your consumer price index, and that is how we measure inflation. So they were expecting a CPI rating of 8.0. So that's what they were expecting, but CPI came in at 8.3. So it came in a little bit more than they were anticipating. But here's the part that really hurt. And that is when you take CPI and you remove the volatility of gas and food out of this equation, you get what's called your core CPI. They were expecting 6.1. That came in at 6.3, which is actually pretty darn bad. So the fact that inflation was worse than they were anticipating automatically caused the market to drop. In fact, the market dropped worse than any day since about 2020. We had the worst day drop since, and I believe it was in May 2020. So that's pretty bad. And anybody who was paying attention to the market on Wednesday saw a absolute sea of red. One of those days where almost anything you could have perhaps had in your portfolio would have been absolutely in the red. So what does this all mean? Well, one of the big things this means is that we have this coming Wednesday, the US Fed is going to meet to determine what their rate hike is going to be. Now, the market has priced in a 75 basis points rate hike because they kind of expected it to be bad. I think initially they were thinking it was going to be 50 or 75, but they priced in 75. We are probably going to get a 75 only because the Fed doesn't like surprises. They usually, if they're planning to go a little bit more hawkish, they usually try to hint that they're going to do that, but they haven't been hinting at anything to that extent. Now, I think most people are thinking about an 85% chance that it's a 75, and then maybe a 15% chance that it is a full 100 basis points. So that would be, of course, knocking that rate up 1%. It is still possible that they might do that because I know that the Fed really, really wants to get inflation under control. And the reality is, if you peel things back even further than your core CPI, and if you actually look at just the everyday goods that people are using, these things are still going up in price. Inflation is still rising in the US. So they really don't have much under control. And here's the thing. Because of the fact that oil's been dropping, oil has been kind of almost creating a false drop in inflation because if you think about it, the price of oil going down, it brings the prices of everything else down a little bit. And if you look at the rest of the world, oil is not falling like it is over here in the US. And a big part of that is that the US, they've been releasing their strategic reserves. So they have been sort of flooding the market with some extra oil to help control the pricing. And as well, some of the tax cuts that Biden has put on oil as well, the tax breaks. This is all making it almost appear like inflation is more under control than it actually is. So what does this all mean? I think the Fed is not stupid. And I think it means that we're going to definitely see some aggressive rate hikes coming. I don't think we're going to initially, if the numbers had come in the way that we had expected, the way that they were expected to come in, then we probably would have had a 50 basis points, and they probably would have looked at easing it a little bit towards the end of the year. But now I think it's going to be a situation where they're going to have to stay aggressive. So it's going to be really, really, really interesting to see how this all plays out. All right, we got a few other people who've dropped in. We've got Jordan. Hi there, Jordan. Hope your day is going well. And we've got Jill. Hey, Jill. And the friggin' Oracle is got a dying phone. Holy banana bread. So it might be time to upgrade your phone or just charge it, whichever fixes it. So that's with the CPI. It's kind of interesting. And this week, all eyes should be on Wednesday and what that Fed does. If the Fed comes out and they do the 75 basis points, the market should be fine. You might actually even see a little bit of green coming out of that because the market likes it when things happen the way the market's priced it in. If, of course, he does come out, if Mr. Papa Powell comes out and says we're going a full 100, well, you're probably going to see a reaction, a red reaction to that if it happens. But we'll have to see what actually does happen. And Ash is in, made it, eyes here. Awesome, Nash. Great to see you. Fantastic. All right. Now, here's another little interesting thing. Let's jump back to Canada for a bit. So, with the whole pandemic, one of the big supports that the government gave was all of the loans to small businesses to keep them afloat. So, in total, the Canadian government dished out approximately $49 billion in loans. And that's a lot. Now, here's kind of an interesting thing that's sort of coming out. Now they're starting to look at that point where they're looking for the businesses to start paying some of these loans back. And an estimate has come out that about 100,000 businesses are going to have to be chased down so that they can try to get their money back. Out of that 100,000, about 40,000 businesses didn't even qualify for the loans, but applied anyway and got that money. So this is all going to fall. This is all going to fall onto the CRA to try to get some of this money back. And I'm not super optimistic because even with the individual, like the CERB and things like that, there was a lot of fraudsters who came in and managed to get their hands on that. And these are, people who are creating, fake accounts, or they're using stolen bank accounts and things like that to get supports. So, there's going to be a certain amount of that money that has to be written off. So, it'd be nice if we could get it back, but it's probably not going to happen. So, one of those things that we need to sort of keep our eyes on, and that's just the way the government, the way the government moved the supports. They didn't have the time, or they say they didn't have the time to get the proper back checks in place just to make sure that this was all on the up and up. So money will be lost. Now, speaking of government, this week we saw the Conservatives pick up a new leader. So Pierre Poilievre, he won in the first ballot. I believe it was 68% of the vote. So that's pretty impressive. And as it is, he's probably going to be on Trudeau quite a bit and causing a ruckus. And that's cool. If it keeps Trudeau on his toes, then things will look a little bit better. Mr. Red Taco says apparently $1 billion was stolen in fraud for individuals. Yeah, absolutely. I mean, there are scammers out there like crazy. Bill Murray recently did a charity event using, with NFTs. People were buying NFTs with ETH, and a lot of ETH was being donated as well for this charity. So my understanding, and I don't have the exact data on this one, but it was roughly 219 ETH got stolen by some scammers. Now the NFTs were fine, but it was just all of the ETH that was going to charity that got stolen. So it's kind of sad when people are out there stealing money going to charity. It's like, holy banana bread. Isn't there other avenues you could be scamming? Let's leave the charities alone. But what can you do, right? All right, yeah. So Pierre Poilievre, now he's running the Conservatives, and of course, as soon as this happens, the Liberals stepped up, and they're starting to talk about some of the there's more supports coming out. So what we're looking at is we're looking at a few different things coming out. So they have announced, and now this isn't entirely Trudeau. A lot of this is actually Singh. This is stuff that came from that deal that Singh made with the Liberals to prop them up. So you're looking at your next two GSTs. Any of you who get GSTs, those are going to be doubled. Anybody who qualifies for the Canadian housing credit, you're going to be able to get an extra $500. And then in addition to that, we've got the dental care coming. I'm okay with the dental care part, honestly. I think children, young children should be able to get free dental care. So that's kind of cool. That part's coming in. The other parts, I don't know. It's one of these things, like the government is like saying, oh, don't worry. This is not going to peak inflation any more than it is. It's all fine. It's fine and dandy. Well, it's not. It is going to impact. Anytime you print money, it creates inflation. It's a very basic law of the way money works. So on this one, yeah, we're going to definitely be seeing a little bit of extra inflation coming from this. So we'll have to see. We may not notice it with the rate hikes continue going up. Maybe they'll cancel each other out, but it just means that it's going to take a little bit longer to get our inflation down to where we want it to be. It's crazy how some could get COVID money and not be eligible, and some got no money at all. Yeah, it's kind of one of those things. There were a lot of people that didn't play by the rules. They got themselves supports, while people who are playing by the rules, they suffered because they didn't have, the hours or they needed, or some reason or another, they didn't qualify. I know there were situations early in the pandemic where some people applied anyway, got the supports, and then they changed the rules, so those people were okay. But the people who didn't apply and played by the rules then got punished because they could have qualified under those circumstances. But I think the government threw out way too much when it comes to the amount of support that they threw out. It's not the best situation. Now, Leslie's saying, talking heads predicting S&P at 3,200 by Christmas. That could be very interesting to see. It's going to be really interesting to see how far things are going to drop. We know there's a recession coming. Most of the bigger financial organizations in Canada right now are already saying, it's very unlikely that we won't go into a recession. So all maps, all directions, all roads are driving into recession. So we're probably going there. The U.S., there's a lot of people that already believe the U.S. is in a recession. And I think that they probably are. At least if they're not, they're at least in the foothills of the recession, if you want to compare it to like a mountain or something like that. So it'll be very interesting to see how that's all going to work out. But yeah, could we drop down to 32? Yeah, we could have. It could be an interesting year. I don't see any kind of recovery, and I know that you've got the optimists out there and I'm an optimist. You got the optimists out there saying, "Oh, everything's going to be great. It's going to be rosy. We're all going to be fine." I don't think that's the case. I think it's going to be, it's going to be a rough end of the ride. The end of the year is going to be fairly rough, and it's going to be rough going into next year, especially people who are in debt. If you're in debt, you're going to get slammed pretty bad when these interest rates keep going up. So it's one of these things. Right now, if you're looking at, if you've got some pretty bad debt, like high interest debt, that should be your top priority, getting rid of that as soon as you possibly can. So it is interesting. And in the fine print. Yeah, exactly. And then Mr. Red Taco, the $500 one-time payment is for people who make less than $20,000 a year, according to their 2021 taxes. Yeah, but keep in mind, if you use, let's say you go and you load up your RRSP, you can knock yourself down to that level if you really, if you're really intent on getting that $500. But it's just one of these things. Like, I don't want to come off as thinking that we shouldn't be helping people who are low income. I just think that sometimes there's better ways. I would rather see a tax break and the government using their money at least a little bit more wisely. So instead of printing money, let's sort of stop some of the money that's being hemorrhaged from some of the people if we can do that. That's kind of my preferred method, but I still think that I still think low income people require support nonetheless. It's just how you go about doing it. All right. And Jill says exactly the interest rates balance of the minimal impact it would have on inflation. Plus, most of the money is coming back into the system directly. People aren't just saving it. Yeah. And especially with the holidays coming up, most of this money will move within the economy. So that's not a bad thing. But at the same time, like I said, there are other ways to do it. And Mr. Red Taco, that's usually how it works, which is sad. Some people who are government programs get between 1,000 and 1,700 a month, depending in province, never got anything. Yeah. Yeah, no, it's one of these things. We've got when it comes to poverty, we've got a lot of people who are at the very bottom. And if they're in a situation like if you have a person who is not able to work, so if they have a disability that prevents them from working, and we then expect them to survive on like maybe $1,000 or $1,200 a month. It's almost impossible. So it just shows that the system does need to be fixed, and how to do that. That's a really good question. We need people thinking about how to do that. You know, I'm not saying that it needs to be a universal basic income, but we do sort of need to find some way to sort of solve some of the severe poverty that we have at the very bottom end. Because when you do have severe poverty and you don't provide any outlet for a lot of people, well, that does actually impact the economy, and it kind of helps spur the crime rate, increase that. Um, and I have 100% sympathy for anybody who, if somebody wants to feed their kids and they go and steal a loaf of bread, I'll tell you, I just let them do it. Heck, I would buy that loaf of bread for them if it were up to me. Um, so that's one of those things. And this is just to sort of put this out with the holidays coming up. Any of you who are well or, better off, don't forget the food banks. They're kind of desperate this time of year and heading into the holidays. There's a lot of hungry people out there. So it never hurts to help out a little bit. All right. Now, where were we? Pretty much with everything going on, you have to save your pennies and keep money under your bed. Yeah, I mean it's kind of sad that we are in a situation where you kind of need to nickel and dime your way just to sort of fight against inflation itself. So, and Jill says tax breaks are only for the rich. Sadly, yeah. If you have money, you can do a lot with that money. It's a reality of life. You can do money, for example, you can you can do tax loss harvesting. You can do all kinds of different shelters for money. Like I know a lot of rich people, the reason they buy artwork, it's not so much that they want that Picasso hanging in their, in their estate or hanging with a handling house. It's that they're tying their money up into it to create a tax haven for that money. So it's kind of really interesting when you look into that. So that is definitely interesting. Holy cow, you guys are totally active today. I love it. Honestly, Candace, all I would like is an adjustment to the ODSP rate to match our poverty rate. We have been below the poverty rate since the late 90s. Yeah, exactly. It's one of those things. It's like, I know, I think like you take somebody on welfare, for example, at one point, I think they were getting paid like, maybe $500-600 a month. Uh, that's just kind of insane. A person can't survive on that. I mean, sure, that's supposed to encourage them to go get at least get a minimum wage job, and you'll get more than that. So it's kind of an interesting system. I mean, the system, is the system broken? You can argue yes, you can argue no. Um, I just think that we need to fix a few different things. If you have people who are 100% able-bodied who just want to sit on welfare, well, that's a different discussion altogether. But when you do have people who are not able to work, and this is when we go back to the whole ODSP thing, that that's to me is a little bit different. And I will argue till the cows come home that if somebody is unable to work, as a society, we have decided that we want to support these folks, and and to support them means that they need to be able to have like a living wage. It's not a situation where they should have to be roommates with 6 other people just because that's the only way they can survive. So anyway, I'm going to get off of my little what do we call it? My little pulpit for the moment. But yeah. So, and Mr. Red Taco says if you look at the rates of OAS, so that's old age security, federal provincial disability, they are around $1,000 a month. So even with that, it's 50% less than a $15 minimum wage. Yeah, absolutely. And this is one of these things, like you guys have probably heard me say that when you're getting towards retirement, your whole investing strategy usually will shift towards passive income. And one of the biggest reasons for that is when you have, sitting in your RRSP or in your TFSA, when you have a lot of passive income coming in that way, it's not being counted against you. Because what will happen with your OAS, your old age security, is once you make a certain amount, they start clawing some of that back. But here's the beautiful thing: passive income doesn't count towards that. So if you set up your portfolio at that point when you're into that retirement time, and you generate yourself a nice amount of passive income, that's money. That means it's coming in, plus you get to keep your OAS. So that's kind of a neat little thing. And that's one of the reasons that investing also tends to shift that way. The other reason, of course, is that when you're talking about growth stocks, if somebody had just retired before, just as we were entering in this bear market, um, it can be scary to have to pull out some of them growth stocks to survive on those right now because you're going to be taking losses. Whereas passive income, it doesn't really matter. It's still coming in, which is kind of nice. And one of the reasons a lot of people do in bear markets, some people will move a lot of their stuff over towards passive income so that they at least have that money coming in. But at the same time, with a bear market, you also need to take advantage of the fact that you've got some incredible growth stocks at very bargain prices. So on the other side, there's some opportunity there. Okay. All right. And Brian says, raise the basic personal exemption. Absolutely. That's a great idea. Could you take the personal exemption? I don't know exactly what it is now. I think it's like 7,000 and something. Easily take that up to about 10,000. Easily, just to try to sort of cut back on the taxing of the lower end of the spectrum. You know, it's just one of those things. It annoys me when we are taking so much from the people who can afford it the least. So it's kind of one of those things. Why don't they raise the personal exemption amount to 30K so low income payers pay no income tax? And even 30K, I don't think we would ever see that happen. But it would be fantastic. I would even say, you could revamp the whole system so that way there you could basically put that tax amount at, like, say, for example, at the living wage amount. Then that would be really good, I think. And people who are making, peanuts can at least take all of their peanuts home instead of, having to divvy them up with the government. So the whole system needs bolts tightened and tweaked. Yeah, exactly. That's exactly what I'm saying. Um, the times have changed several times since the amounts have last been adjusted. Yeah, it's one of these things. Most things have not adjusted correctly. Like you even take right now, when you look at the amount of inflation that's flying around us right now, most things, especially government things, when they adjust them for inflation, they're adjusting them for last year's inflation. So they're really not helping you now. So it is absolutely making things much more difficult, I think, right now for people who are in the system. So when it comes to the system, I think it depends on what side of the fence you're on. Yeah, it does. Um, Sometimes it's just how much money you have available to utilize can really make a big difference. So that's, yeah, it's one of those things. BPE is going to 1,500, needs to double. Okay. And that could happen. Let's find out. I've been on both sides of the system fence, and it's scary. Yeah, absolutely. And I think a lot of people in this community, even the people in this community who perhaps are doing a little bit better than some, I think they've also been on every side of the fence. I can say myself, I've been in that position where, living paycheck to paycheck, and sometimes not even, heck, I know when I was in, just after university, there was times when it's like, I'm like sitting to myself, I wonder if I wrote a check to myself if I could cash it and then cover it when I got paid. You don't want to do that. That's that's a way that you can get your card in a little bit of trouble. So, and I don't think there's checks around anymore. But all right, Brian says, I know people that work and can't afford a home, but they can pay taxes. Yeah, that's one of them interesting things. I'll give you a really funny little story. So my parents, they live in a place called Beaver Bank. So it's it's just outside of Halifax. Now the city water doesn't go to them all the way, so it stops. Um, so they have a well, and they're always having to they're always having to pay to have water shipped in when their well goes dry, but yet they get a water bill. And that water bill is, and this is what the government will say. They'll say, well, it's because we got gullies and we need to maintain them. Never ever, when I lived there, saw somebody maintaining those gullies. Um, and they would charge you for any water that runs off of your site when it rains, because that's water running into the gullies, and the gullies have to move that water, so you have to pay for that. So I always thought that was really funny that they get a and it's not a small bill. They would get a nice sized little water bill, even though they didn't have water, so the basic necessity of life. And so to me, that was always a lot of interesting, funny things here. All right, Jordan says, 30K a couple on ODSP gets only 14,592 take home pay per annum. Let that sink in. Yeah, absolutely. Want to learn how to pinch pennies? Pennies? Come live with us for a month. Yeah, it's ridiculous how much, I don't know how they calculate how somebody can live off of this. Because they're probably looking at it and say, okay, well, you need this much for rent, you need this much for food, and you need this much for personal belongings. Now, I don't know if they think that you're renting like a wooden, like a wooden box in a back alley or something, but sometimes, yeah, they really expect money to be stretched further than it can be. So that's not a good thing. Now, Mr. Red Taco says, I remember when I was between jobs and it was a really slow time. I had to go on welfare and it was 840 for the month, and your rent was 800. There, look at that, $800. Holy banana bread. That leaves you with $40 for everything else. Now, tell me if you can eat $40 a month. Basically, you know what that means. It's basically just buy a bunch of saltine crackers and you can sort of have a few crackers every so often. Holy cow. That's kind of ridiculous. And that's kind of the whole point I was kind of making. And Dimitri is here. Hello, Professor Candace. Hello, Dimitri. It's good to see you. All right. Hey, Mr. Red Taco, how do you control the rain? That's a good question. There are conspiracy people out there with their little hats that will probably answer HARP. You use HARP. But, I don't think we can control the rain per se. A wooden box in the alley is probably $1,500 a month. Yeah. Yeah, I hear that. And massive thumbs up, Mountain Finance. Thank you once again, Mountain of Inspiration. See, we got the whole mountain thing coming here. It's like together, Dimitri and I, we make up a mountain range. So it's kind of cool. And yeah, absolutely. If you haven't yet, just throw a quick thumbs up. It does help the algorithm, and it helps me somehow on that, which is kind of cool. Before we move on, I just wanted to talk very quickly about, I made a promise at 400 subs, and basically the promise is I would do a drinking stream once we got to 1,000 subs. Well, we're like 31 subs away from that drinking stream. Now, here's the caveat. any of you guys who want to see that stream, you want to make sure that you sign up for the Facebook group, because I'm not going to do it on this account. I'm actually going to use it just my personal account, because I don't think a drinking stream would reflect well on the community. So I don't want to do it on here. So I'm going to do it on just the Candace the Mountain account. And I'm going to link it like I'll put a link in the comments, or sorry, comments in the on the community tab. I'll put a link there, and then I'll throw them up on the Facebook group. So that way there, if you guys want to come and see me try to talk about finance while becoming one, then two, then three sheets to the wind, that will be the thing. And here's the thing, it probably won't take long, because I don't drink. I mean, I used to drink, but the last drink I think I had was probably about maybe 5 years ago. So I don't think it's going to take much. So I'm going to start off nice and slow, because I don't want to like sort of have the stream and start it, and then 3 minutes later it's like I passed out. That would be so embarrassing. I'd never live that down. But yeah, we will make sure everybody gets a link. All right. Now let's see here. Get back to where I was. All right. And then Mr. Red Taco says, I had always prepared for just in case if I had enough food for the month to get me through, but you learn to adjust your income really fast. Yeah, and that's one of those things. When you're put in that situation that you have no choice, you become very good at budgeting, which is really, really cool. We control the rain with our cities and pollution every day as humans. Well, yes, absolutely. We have complete control over our weather. And here's that interesting thing. Right now, here we're going off on a tangent. Hurricane Fiona just became a hurricane, is sitting out in the Atlantic. Now, the interesting thing is, we're a little bit still uncertain. I mean, yeah, we know it's going to head up. We know it's not going to go into the Gulf of Mexico now. But one of the things we're waiting for is we're looking at, there's a typhoon out in the Pacific that is going to head north, and it's going to slam into the jet stream. And when it does that, it's going to push the jet stream up, and that may create a trough. And what that trough does, if it works the way we think it will, is it might actually deflect Hurricane Fiona. And Hurricane Fiona is supposed to get into at least a Cat 3 or above. It may deflect it right out into the Atlantic and impact nobody. But if it doesn't hit it hard enough, then we're probably looking at a landfall on the East Coast, maybe even Newfoundland. So that's going to be interesting. It's kind of weird that a typhoon in the Pacific can affect a hurricane in the Atlantic. So it just shows how everything is connected. And I find that to be absolutely fantastic. All right. The drinking stream will not reflect well on your mountain brand. Exactly. That's why I'm doing it on a completely different channel. Other than the fact that when I do drink, I just become silly. So I'm silly enough now. I'll just be a little more silly, and my jokes will be sillier. I'm surprised we aren't charged for the air we breathe. I imagine we may, maybe 50 years from now, there'll be an air tax. It would not surprise me. And we got a question. So quick question. Do you think dividend stocks outperform covered call or royalty fund or EIT? Well, here's the thing. Dividend stocks is a very broad thing. So when you say a dividend stock, so a covered call ETF, for example, well, they're producing dividends. So that is still technically a dividend stock, or an income, an income trust like EIT, or even one of the royalty funds. So they're all dividends, and they all produce dividends or a passive income. So here's the thing to sort of look at. Sometimes people will come into the whole dividend thing, and they will see somebody, and they will see a stock, and they're like, oh, look at this split core here. I think DF at one point was paying like about a 17, was it 17%, something crazy like that at one point. And I've heard of people who are like, oh, well, why am I buying all these other stocks that aren't paying me that much? I'm just going to put everything I have into this DF. And problem is that it was a split core, and it wasn't really sustainable. So it works in such a way, a lot of times with split cores, if it's not sustainable, what they do is they start taking money from your adjusted cost base. So that way there, if you do sell it, you end up taking a higher capital gains when you sell. So you end up paying for it in the long term. Now, if you have it, of course, in like a registered account, so your TFSA or your RRSP, that part doesn't really affect you. But sometimes it's not always good to put all your eggs in one basket. So it's one of these things. Now, if you guys check out tomorrow, I am actually showing my entire Wealthsimple. So we're going to look at my TFSA, my US TFSA, my RRSP, and my US RRSP. So I'm going to show you everything I got. And one of the things that you will see is when you look at my overall amount that I have in each account, EIT, Canoe EIT does come in at first, and it's only 8% of my entire portfolio. But most items are, there's a couple at 5, and then there's most of them are in like, anywhere from like 1% all the way up to 4%. So you'll find that I try to spread things out, and that's that whole thing about not putting all your eggs in one basket. So that's one of these things that if you find a great covered call ETF, well, sure, you can invest into it, but don't let it get more than 5%, because if something does go wrong with that ETF, that's going to burn you. So you want to sort of minimize. So if you make the bad pick every so often, and every investor will invest in something that turns out to be a dog's breakfast. And the big thing is if you've got 35 stocks and one of them turns out to be a dog's breakfast, well, the other ones, you're not even going to notice it. Then you can get out of that one that's really bad, or look at an exit strategy for that. So hopefully that's answered what you're looking for, Arun. If not, throw up another question, and we will address that. And Mountain said, a great question. Absolutely. I love questions like that. And it's crazy how people can't even write out a budget. I can write out budgets all day. I love it. Yeah, absolutely. People who have heard me and talked, listened to me for a long time, they know I am a huge fan of Excel. So if it's like, ooh, can I make a budget? I already got a budget. Let's just make a brand new budget. Sure, why not? I am absolutely a fan of Excel, and I love to track things, because I then know what's going on. Like, I know what's going on with my stocks. I know what they're worth. Here's this thing. A lot of times people will get into this mindset. Well, I'm only going to sell in a profit. Well, here's what I do is if I have a stock that's not in profit and it's not doing anything for my account, and there's another stock that has a lot more potential, and maybe it even has a slightly higher dividend yield. It's in the same boat, but it has potential, and I can see where it's going to recover a lot better than that one stock that's kind of really a stinker. I will sell and move it into the other one, because in the long run, I'll make more money by doing that than just holding on and saying, no, I'm not selling until it's in profit. Well, while you're waiting for it to get in profit, that's money that could have been making money. So that's kind of one of those things I keep going. Now, when it comes to investing, though, you have to kind of get some experience. You have to really sort of get a feel for the market to understand how everything is moving. Know when to, sort of like that Kenny Rogers song, you got to know when to hold them and know when to fold them. It's absolutely true when it comes to investing. So that is kind of cool. The butterfly effect. Yes, in regards to the hurricanes, I hear you. The truth is most people don't like to think on paper. Budgeting forces people to think on paper. Yeah. Or just think in a spreadsheet, and then you don't even have to touch the paper. Thank you. I guess I did answer your question. Awesome, Arun. I don't think, maybe you've been here before, Arun, but your name is very unfamiliar. So welcome. If this is your first time here, super welcome. Anybody else who's here your first time, welcome to the stream. This is awesome. You guys are totally kicking it. Like, and I say this all the time. I got tons of stuff over here when it comes to the news this week. But I've always said, you know what? If you guys just to start throwing questions and we have some great conversations, I don't care if I even get to anything, because those are simply just tools to open up the conversation. And I think we've had some really good stuff already today, which is fantastic. Okay. And Mr. Red Taco says, I would have pieces of paper everywhere of budgets over and over again, but I'm weird. I don't find budget scary. First time this week winning. Hey, absolutely. And that's kind of the fantastic thing. All right. Um, Let me just take a look here. Here's a really interesting thing. Amazon this week, they purchased a company called Klostermans. And what Klostermans does is they manufacture warehouse machinery and robotics. So it looks to me like Amazon investing in a little bit on this nature. It looks to me that Amazon is really starting to ramp up the robotic side, and that makes sense. And I think that's going to be one of the big trends we're going to start seeing in a lot of businesses as we run into the issues that we have with the labor shortage. So this is a great way around it. And it didn't surprise me to see this in the news. And I'm thinking, okay, I think I'm going to start seeing a lot more about that now. Would you do a video about budgeting? Absolutely. Absolutely, I will. Um, Now, yesterday morning, I did a I did a video. I'm learning how to talk, folks. Um, I did a video yesterday morning. I called it, new investor. I think day one. So I want to actually build up because I've got new investor videos from like last October, but I've learned a lot since last October, and my video quality has increased, and I have better equipment. So I really want to start revisiting a lot of those basic skills and put together sort of a modern playlist of the new investor series. So I'll probably look to do a few more of those. And budgeting, I think, is a really good one. So I would certainly love to do budgeting. I did so far. I've redone the emergency fund one, and then, of course, sort of that first step one that I did yesterday. So, yeah, absolutely. And this is the big thing, guys. If you're not on my Facebook group, get over there. Feel free to post anything you want in that group, other than don't post links. Unless it's a link to a story like a news site, then that's cool. But don't do the personal links unless you talk to me. If you talk to me, I'm probably going to be cool about it because I I'm a very, very strong believer in cross promotion. So if any of you do have something that I think would gel with the community, I'll probably say yes. So that's kind of cool. And Jill says that's a good idea. Yeah, absolutely. So I'm looking forward to that because here's one of the things. There is a community that I began this channel in, but we've grown beyond that community. We're our own community now. We have an overlap with the community that the dancers have. But we also have our own just brand of people. And I'm seeing new people come in all the time. And I'm seeing some questions that, there's some brand new people in here. And I'm like, okay, well, you know what? Every so often I have to stop, take a step back for those guys and sort of bring them up to speed with the rest of us. And that's kind of one of those things. So absolutely. Those of you on the Facebook page, um, just utilize it. Put anything you want in there. Heck, even if you want to show me a picture of your dog or your cat more, well, rather your cat, but no, your dogs are cute too. Do it. I'm okay with that. I'm totally okay. I'm pretty chill when it comes to that stuff. So the more stuff you guys want to do, just do it. Questions, comments, and in the case of like with Mr. Red Taco and his idea for a budget video, you can throw things up there. I really, 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 really try to go out of my way to make the videos that you guys want to see. So when somebody tells me, if somebody says to me, can you do a budget video? There's probably 6 people that would love to see a budget video. And plus, there's going to be new people who find the channel through that budget video. So that is all awesome. And that to me is pretty cool. And plus, you know what? When you guys make a request, I can basically say, oh, yeah, like last week, Tim Danter asked for the Pfizer video. So I said, sure, let's do it. I didn't have to expend any brain power. I could just jump straight into Pfizer. And the funny thing is, I went into that video thinking Pfizer was going to be a little bit on the iffy side, with the pandemic not there. But then when I actually saw their history and saw everything that this company is doing behind the scenes, I was like, holy banana bread, this is a really good investment. So, I actually added a few shares because I'm like, okay, yeah, I think I want to have a few in there. But yeah, anyway, Mr. Red Taco says that the pet memes are coming. Yeah, I love memes. Memes are fun. Yeah, it's just one of those things. I mean, the only rules I really have for the community when it comes to that Facebook page is just be respectful of everybody and each other. And, and if somebody asks a question and you know the answer, feel free to jump in and help out because, that's kind of, a thousand heads are better than one. So that's kind of the way I look at that. All right, let's see what else I got here. And we'll get to Mr. Red Taco here in a second. A little tiny bit on oil. So Putin has actually threatened to rip up all existing supply contracts if the EU puts a cap on Russian oil, if it's actually imposed. So that's kind of interesting. That could definitely cause a lot of pain. So that might make them reflect a bit on whether or not they'll go with that cap they were planning to do. Now, the EU is also currently looking for ways to cope with their energy prices. And some of the ways I've heard is windfall tax has been thrown around a bit. Also, Hungary has started using energy caps so that you can't charge an exorbitant amount for energy. Now, I don't know where the money is going to go to compensate the companies. Denmark's been doing cash handouts, and Spain has been just cutting the taxes on it. But right now, the whole EU, they're looking at different ways just to try to find a way to mitigate with that winter coming. So, that is kind of one of those things. Mr. Red Taco says originally I came from the High Ride channel, trying to find Canadians who are in the money investing as few far in between. Yeah, absolutely. No, I mean, this channel is distinctively Canadian, but, and I throw this but in there, I do love my American stocks and I love jumping down into the States because I find that when you're looking at investing, you can't ignore the biggest, the biggest market in the world, which is the US. And there's a lot of opportunity there. And as Canadians, I think, yeah, Canada take advantage of all of the stuff we have here. But every so often, it doesn't hurt to actually jump into the US. So there is a video I got planned coming up where I'm going to look at, I'm actually going to break down the CDRs and all of the different CDRs that you can use. So if you don't want, for example, to actually buy the American stocks and you just want one of those certificates of depository receipts, which is a CDR, we'll talk about them and what they are. So that's going to be, I think, kind of cool. And if we helped with supplying the world with oil, Canada would be rolling in $5 bills. Yeah. Right now, we do not have the capacity to get out the oil that there is demand for. So that's kind of one of those things. They actually said, and I mentioned this, I think, on the show maybe 3-4 weeks ago, that right now Canada has missed out on about $5 billion in profits over the summer from the oil that we just didn't have the capacity to send out. We have the oil. We are actually an oil-rich country, but we just don't have the way to get it out. And the other thing too is that we don't have the ability to process our own oil, and I think we really should be doing that. Instead of sending it out, having somebody else process it and then sell it back to us at an exorbitant price. So that is one of those things. Is buying American stocks worth it with all the fees conversions? Well, here's the way I do it. By using my USD Wealth Simple. So Wealth Simple Plus. So basically it costs $10 a month. But they give you a USD account. So you make one conversion and that's when you're putting money into that account. But once the money is in that account, you don't have a conversion fee on it anymore. It's there. You can use it. It's American money. Now, when it comes to investing, so with your TFSA, that is where in the US part of your TFSA, where you want to put your growth stocks. And I'll tell you why here in a second. Because your growth stocks, they'll grow. You'll have no taxes on them, which is fantastic. But when it comes to dividend stocks, so your American dividend stocks, those ones, we have a treaty with the US when it comes to dividend stocks. And that is if you put it in a registered account, the withholding tax is waived. Problem is that agreement does not include the TFSA. It only includes your RRSP. So if you're looking at big American dividend stocks, you want to put those into your RRSP because then you don't pay the 15% withholding tax. And if you do it in your RRSP or your TFSA, you get charged 15% on those dividends. But the problem with that is that it, sorry, I was just thinking of something. The problem with that is that you then run into a situation where you don't get that money back. If you had it in a personal account and you paid the withholding tax, you can claim that back when it comes to tax time. So it's kind of that neat little thing. Anyway, sorry, I got distracted because Jill was picking up. Somebody sent us a box came and she opened it up and there was like an air purifier in it. And it's like, what the heck? So she wasn't sure, and I think the person came and realized that it got sent here, and so they came to get it, so she just went and grabbed it. So I was just looking at that for a second. Anyway, all right, Mr. Wethacker says, I think Canada could help, and it would be a help to our country as well as to the world. Yeah, when it comes to the oil, absolutely. And that's also part of that whole thing with the hydrogen. If you guys remember, there was a meeting between Trudeau and the leader of Germany, and that was all about setting up hydrogen that they could then ship over to Germany. Now, this is going to take a few years to get into place because they're looking at building a giant a wind farm near Stephenville, Newfoundland, and that will then be used to create green hydrogen. Now, hydrogen comes in different. Well, hydrogen's all the same, but you've got green hydrogen, you've got blue hydrogen. Blue hydrogen is the stuff that's made with natural gas. And you also have gray hydrogen, which is made with coal. Both the blue and the gray hydrogen, they have a huge carbon footprint. So a lot of carbon is used to do it. But you don't have that carbon footprint with the green hydrogen. So that's why they're sort of pushing the green hydrogen. That will then be shipped over to Germany. And to do that, you actually you add nitrogen to that hydrogen to make it into ammonia, because ammonia is much more stable when it comes to shipping, because hydrogen, as you know, is a very flammable gas. So that is pretty darn cool. So we're looking at that. And of course, we do have lots of oil, and it's a reality of what we have. And I think if the Conservatives get elected in 2025, Poilievre has said he wants to do processing within Canada. We'll have to see if that happens, but that's not a bad idea, because it would certainly mean a lot more money for this country, because Canada is, as the second largest country in the world, and with the amount of resources that we have, if we invested in all of these resources correctly, we would probably be a superpower, to be honest. Not that Canadians would really want to be a superpower, but we would definitely be a lot more well off than what we already are, because we have the resources, everything from fresh water to uranium, lithium, nickel, heck, even blueberries. We'll put that down there. And here's a funny little story too. Did you know that a barrel of maple syrup is worth a lot more than a barrel of oil? And which is kind of funny. In Quebec, they actually have a strategic maple syrup supply where they have insane amounts of maple syrup in barrels, and that is worth an insane amount of money, which is kind of interesting. But anyway, try to get through just a couple more pieces of news really quickly, because I know we're slowly running out of time, but we can go a little bit over if we have to. So in regards to computer chips, as we know, the U.S. does not want China making chips, and they do not want to be exporting chips to China. They want to be making their chips all at home. And what that is meaning is that they've added 2 new companies to their list who cannot export to China, and that is NVIDIA and AMD. So that is pretty interesting. And I would be okay with being super, but not superpower. That's too far. Yeah, exactly. Canada's already a superpower. It's okay to be a superpower. Yeah, that works. And we won't tell anyone if you go over 1 minute past an hour. Yeah. All right. That's, since you guys won't tell anyone, we'll definitely push on a little bit. Okay. Another little story I want to bring up, and I keep bringing up the baby boomers because not most people, a lot of people in the media just aren't bringing this up. But Jimmy Jean, who is the chief economist at the Desjardins Group, he has brought out a report saying that there's a record number of Canadians aged 55 to 64 retiring over the last year. And he said that as a result of this, it has been leaving businesses scrambling. It has pushed wages higher, and it has been a serious threat to downward productivity. So I think that's pretty kind of cool, because that's one of the things I've been mentioning. I did a video on it as well, that with the baby boomers leaving the market, we don't have enough young workers to replace them. And that's going to be happening for probably the next, probably almost 10 years. We're going to be looking at situations where it'll be, well, if you're an employee, it will be an employee's market for a while, which is good. That also may help things not, at least unemployment wise, it may help us not have as bad of a recession as what potentially we could have, if they were laying off a lot of people. Because now it's a situation where you're going to see layoffs, but there are other jobs that you can fill, just to get through even if it's just to get through the recession type thing. And interestingly enough, Skip the Dishes, they actually had some layoffs. They laid off 350 people from their logistics team. So that's kind of interesting. Good old Skip the Dishes. We also almost had a strike. So there were three unions anyway in the US that were threatening to go on strike. But at the last minute, and we talked about this on the Danter Banter the other night, I was on there. And I said that if we went into a strike, it would be very short-lived, sort of like the CN and the CP strikes that almost happened but didn't. They sort of got kiboshed right away. And that's exactly what happened. So they had a new deal. It provides, they're looking at a 24% pay increase over 5 years, going through to 2024. And they're also looking at some payouts of around $11,000 on average. And they're all getting an extra paid day off for the workers. So I think they came out of that looking pretty good. Another little thing here, just before I get back to the comments. In regards to restaurants, because we did mention about Skip the Dishes. So Restaurants Canada have come out and they've sort of gave us a whole bunch of information. So one of the things they said that right now, a lot of the restaurants out there are working at about 80% capacity due to these staffing shortages. And as a result of that, we're looking at about 72% of restaurants have increased the hours that are being worked by the managers and owners to sort of make up some of the slack. 64% of restaurants have had to reduce their hours of operation. So that's, if your favorite restaurant isn't open all the time like it used to, that's probably why. And about 77% of restaurants in Canada have had to raise their wages. And that kind of makes sense as well. Now, another little tiny tidbit that I thought was really interesting too, and this is not restaurant-wise, but this has to do with airplanes. So Air Canada and WestJet, they have been able to happily claim that they have been able to be on time, or at least within 15 minutes of their arrival time, for 50% of the time. So basically, when you're going to the airport, flip a coin. If it comes up heads, you're going to be on time. If it comes up tails, well, you're just in trouble. You might as well not fly. But it's interesting. When we actually look before the pandemic, this number was about 70%. 70% of the time, they would get you there within 15 minutes of your arrival time. So it's fallen. I actually thought it was better than that, but I guess it wasn't. Maybe I was over optimistic about the airlines. But, that's kind of an interesting thing. All right. Young workers who don't expect $100,000 a year on their first day of work. Yeah. You're not going to make $100,000 a year if you're coming brand new into the workforce. Not unless you can throw a baseball really, really well or something. 50%. Oh, they're shooting for just good enough. Well, that's it, right? That's exactly what it is. They're shooting for, let's just try to get through the whole bare minimum. It reminds me of, I used to work for Compaq at one point, and we had a model. It was a Compaq Presario 50/50. And people used to call in, they'd be like, yep, it's an appropriate name because I got a 50/50 chance of it working when I turn it on. I heard that like a lot with that model. We were very happy when that model finally went way of the dodo bird, but that is kind of the situation we have with the airlines right now. Now, another thing too I should mention as well, we have the merge for Ethereum, so that has now happened. Ethereum is no longer proof of work; it's now proof of stake. So here's the interesting thing: right now, there's no guarantee that we're going to see any kind of a reduction in gas fees with this. And actually, the person who would know 100% if there's been any impact to the gas fees would be the friggin' Oracle. So if you're still here, let us know. I don't think there has been. I think gas fees are probably going to stick around the same for now, and then we'll have to take a look and see what's going to happen. It's so hard right now to really get a good sort of a good grasp on what's happening in crypto, and part of the reason is we've been seeing a lot of interesting movements with the American dollar. So on on Wednesday, so Tuesday going into Wednesday, we saw Bitcoin rise all the way up to like 22,000 and some change. And a lot of that was because the American dollar was falling. It wasn't even anything
I'm not sure I understand.
I'm going to take the watch off. The watch wants to sort of chime in. So a lot of that was because the American dollar was falling. So that was just inflating the price of Bitcoin and Ethereum because it's priced in American dollars. It also was doing the same thing to oil just before the whole CPI came out. And then at that point, when everything went south, well, the American dollar was skyrocketing and everything was then coming right back down. So oil crashed and Bitcoin had a nice big giant red candle. So that was kind of one of those things. And yeah, those compact computers were not that good. I think the only thing that really well, I'll tell you why the compact computers were horrible. It was the power supplies. Because when I was a tier 2, one of the things I used to do is a if a computer was just having trouble after trouble after trouble, sometimes I would call up a service center, have the customer take the computer in there, and then it might have like a 115 volt or something. I'd be like, look, let's just we'll put in like a 250. And that would fix it every time. It's because they cheaped out on the power supplies in those and they put in really weak ones. And once everybody was, if your computer's not getting the proper amount of power, you're going to get lockups. You're going to get freezes. And that's what happened with those compacts. So, all right, the friggin' Oracle has spoken. Gas has fallen a bit, but now ETH is being burned. Okay, so there we go. So that's kind of a neat little thing too. I think crypto is going to be fun to watch. I mean, I'm not going to sell my Bitcoin. I'm just going to sit on it and wait for the market to return. Here's one of the things. When we get to the other side of all these rate increases, they're going to go too far. They always will. And then we'll get to a point where we do have to start cutting rates to stimulate the economy. When that happens, that I think is when you're going to see a lot of interesting movement in Bitcoin. So I'm kind of holding out for that. All right. See, I managed to sneak everything in there really quickly. I love that. So we're now well, technically we ended 3 minutes ago, but hey, who's counting, right? So this week, as I mentioned before, we got a video coming tomorrow. I'm showing you everything I got. Everything in my Wealth Simple, so that will be kind of awesome. Then on Wednesday, I'll be back on the Danter Banter again this week. And then the following week, I'm going to host the Danter Banter show because they're going to be on a plane or something of that nature. I think it's the week after that, the 28th. On the 28th, I'll be hosting it. But I'll be on there this week. So if you guys haven't checked out the Danter Banter, just check out Tim and Nancy Danter on YouTube. Throw up a sub and then check us out on Wednesday night. We always have some pretty good conversation. And then Thursday, I'm actually doing a deep dive on Shopify. Now, here's one of these things. I've watched Shopify when they were like priced higher than golden banana bread. And I watched that price fall. But here's the thing. I think the fundamentals are pretty strong on the company, and I do think they're going to recover. So right now, it's not that bad of a place if you're thinking about doing some due diligence on it. And that's what I did, and I've added it a little bit. is okay. So think of it this way. So the Dancer Banter is the main show name now, and Crypto Night in Canada is kind of a component. So whenever we have a very crypto focused show, it'll be called Crypto Night in Canada, but it's technically the Dancer Banter. So, and that's like, a lot more inflation talk, supply chain, and some driving stuff, because Tim used to be the head driving instructor on Canada's Worst Drivers. So, he's got to pull that in, and it's going to be pretty cool. And of course, I'm the stock person. I come in, I give my stock stuff, and then I have an opinion on everything else because I always have an opinion. And I also compete with Tim for the driest joke of the night. So yeah, that's kind of a thing. So that's the thing. If you guys all head over there, let me know afterwards, maybe on our Facebook page, who got the driest joke of the night, because I think that would be kind of cool. And I always seem to miss their live times. Yeah, their live times is, and I'll give this an Eastern, basically 8 p.m. Eastern, Wednesday nights. But there's also you can also catch it afterwards if you really want to, because it's kind of sort of like this one here. You can catch this one after if you want to, because I look at it this way. It's like, if you got an opportunity to do something really fun on Sunday afternoon, then I'd be like, don't come watch me. Go do the fun thing. Watch this later. Just put it on the background as you're doing something else. So, it's not like it's one of the reasons that I don't put a lot of graphics and stuff up on the live stream, because I kind of think of it as almost like in a podcast version. And I'd like people to be able to, let's say you're cleaning the house or something. Yeah, just throw me on in the background, and it'll all be pretty good that way. So anyway, that is kind of cool. But yeah, absolutely. And this is what Red I like live so I can comment. Yeah, that's one of those things too. And it's good. Like this here was a great night. Like you guys were just on the ball. Like I had to struggle to get the rest of my information in. And look at this. We're 6 minutes over the 1 hour format already. But that's because you know what? You guys come first, and that's what I'm here for. I'm here for you guys. And it has been a fantastic show. So anyway, that's what I got coming up. And then next week, of course, we'll of course have a video on Saturday. And oh gosh, for the life of me, I can't remember what it is. I think I had some. Oh yes. So Saturday morning, I think I'm gonna do a sort of a very basic overview of day trading. That's what Saturday morning will be, because I've had a few people asking about it, and they're like, because people know that that's how I make my money on the side, is by day trading. So I'll give you a brief overview, and there'll be lots of cautions because day trading is hard. I don't want to make it sound easy. It's very easy to lose money doing it. So it's one of those things that you want to be absolutely 100% careful and due diligence. But we'll look at it. I haven't figured out yet how I want to format it, and this isn't even official that I'm going to do this video yet. But I'm thinking about it. It's what I'm kind of leaning towards. Unless something really big pops up this week that I want to address, then it's probably going to be a sort of a very, very quick overview of day trading, and maybe provide some resources. Now, those of you who are as well interested in day trading, in my extra links down below, and my affiliate links for Amazon, there is the day trading book for it's a day trading for Canadians for dummies. It's a fantastic introductory book, so I highly recommend it. But anyway, we'll just leave that as it is. And here we go. And this is absolutely what I'm saying. Day trading is not for the faint of heart. No, it's one of these things that if you're the type of person that if you walk in and you lose $1,000, like you make a trade and bang, you're down $1,000. If that is going to devastate your world, then you don't want to be day trading, because that will happen. I've had days where I've lost a ton of money initially, and I've had to fight back. I always fight back, and I'm methodical, and I always get myself on the positive. But it can sometimes be very, very deflating. So that's just one of those things to put down. But anyway, we'll talk a little bit more about it, and I will give more information about it. And like I said, I'm going to provide you guys the content that you want anyway. And I know enough people are interested in that. That's why I'm going to do it. Um, and there's, I'm a saver, not a spender. Yeah, absolutely. But I'll give you an idea. Just so last week, so Monday to Friday, doing my day trading, um, I made about, I think, $1,200. But now keep in mind, I got to pay taxes on that and everything else, and CPP and all of that other stuff. Um, so there are different, that just gives you a general idea, but that is not typical. Most people who go into day trading are lucky to break even probably for their first year because it takes a certain kind of analytical mind to really see patterns well. And I excel at that. So I do have a gift when it comes to that. But here's the thing, once YouTube can pay all my bills, I will probably step a lot back from day trading and concentrate even more on the channel. I still put in full-time hours on YouTube in addition to this. So anyway, there you go. You guys have managed to keep me here for an extra 10 minutes. So bravo, guys. You guys are awesome. Anyway, with that being said, this has been a fantastic afternoon. You guys go out, enjoy the rest of your afternoon. I think this is like is this the last one? Yeah, this is the last weekend of summer. So if you got a barbecue, spark it up, folks. Have yourself a good evening. I will see you guys live, of course, again next weekend. And that'll be fantastic. And I'll see you in my videos this week. So, have a great one. Thank you for coming and take care, everybody.